My name is Datta Grimes, and today I want to talk about a town in Kentucky called Berea. Anybody ever heard of Berea? Oh, then I'm useless. But I want to show you some of Berea, Kentucky's connections to the Rosenwald School program today. And in order to do so, I'm going to take you back into the 1800s, okay? So, my title, One Blood, Berea College's Calling, Controversy, and Connection to Rosenwald Schools. Berea College's college motto, God hath made of one blood all nations of men. Berea College was started by John G. Fee, who was a famous abolitionist. He was born in Bracken County, Kentucky, to slaveholders. He became an abolitionist while at Lane Theological Seminary in Ohio. He believed unflinchingly in black equality. Now, we understand that there were people who were anti-slavery, but they did not believe in black equality, right? And so there's a distinct difference. John G. Fee was a man who was willing to be beaten and expelled from the state for what he believed in. He was a staunch supporter of blacks and black equality. He originally founded Berea College in 1856. He planned it as a school to be open to all races and all sexes. For this, he was dragged from his home, beaten by a mob, and exiled from Kentucky for his beliefs until about 1859. He was assaulted, I believe, over a dozen times for what he believed in. Yet he continually fought for black equality, equality of the sexes, and non-sectarianism. When he returned to Kentucky, he taught black soldiers at Camp Nelson during the Civil War. So, everybody know what Camp Nelson is? This was the place where many of the black soldiers in Kentucky and surrounding areas enlisted. So it's going to become a huge place. This is a picture of John G. Fee. It's going to be a place where black soldiers get both education and they are preached to by John G. Fee. But when you look at John G. Fee's writings about that time at Camp Nelson, one thing he's very, very clear about is the fact that these black soldiers are hungry for education. You know, if you look for them in their barracks at night, what they're doing is they have scraps of paper and they're already trying to make out letters. Any scraps of paper that they can find, they're trying to read. Any of them who already have some knowledge, they're already teaching one another. And so, again, you know, we see this idea of self-help. They are hungry for education. A lot of times what we read tells us that it was the American Missionary Association or it was the Freedmen's Bureau who brought education, you know, to blacks after the Civil War and during the Civil War. Again, if you read the writings of those who were working with the American Missionary Association, they again talk about this hunger and desire for education that they've already seen and that they've already found. Also, John G. Fee did work for the American Missionary Association. So, he was the founder of Berea, Kentucky, a utopian experiment. He returned to Kentucky in 1864. He opened Berea College in 1866 as an elementary school. By the way, the town of Berea, Kentucky is named for the biblical city of Berea, where they were earnest and faithful, and they sought after the word. Okay? So, he opened Berea College in 1866. The city and the school are dedicated to Christian principles of anti-rum, anti-caste prejudice, and anti-sectarianism. It was established as a truly interracial society by distributing land to both poor blacks and whites alongside each other. They actually drew up rules about where you could live. You had to be integrated. You had to live beside one another. You had to work and play together. You had to attend church together. So this was a truly interracial society. By 1875, Berea College boasted 237 students. That included 143 blacks. From 1866 to 1894, more blacks than whites attended Berea College, except for 1 year during that time. Famous black Berean graduates. The most famous is Carter G. Woodson. He's the father of Black History Month. He started the Journal of Negro History. And we have Mary E. Britton. She's a doctor. She was the first female black doctor in Lexington. Her sister was Julia Britton Hooks, and she was the first black music teacher to instruct whites. We also have James Bond. He was an 1892 Berea alum, and he was on the board. He was a professor at Fisk University, but he also goes on to run, and I'm going to mess up the name, but it was the Interracial Coalition. It was a national organization. He's also the grandfather of Senator Julian Bond. Okay? Critiques of Berea College. Overwhelmingly, black Bereans trusted John G. Fee. He taught and inspired many of these soldiers at Camp Nelson, and they actually follow him to Berea. So he has their actual trust. The mission of Berea College and its commitment to black equality, however, changed under the leadership of William Goodall Frost. He was president from 1892 to 1920. He sought to recruit poor whites versus blacks to Berea. He did so because of funding. This causes problems. John G. Fee immediately resigned when Frost was elected. He did not want Frost to be the president of Berea College. So John G. Fee is sitting on the board of trustees. When Frost takes over, he steps down. Frost makes it his mission to begin recruiting Appalachian whites. He calls them our present-day forefathers. And slowly but surely, that idea begins to consume the school. Now, one of the major criticisms of John G. Fee is that he did not train someone to carry on his mission. Nobody really ever discredited his belief in equality. Nobody really challenged him on that. However, the one mistake he made, some said, was that he didn't train up anyone to continue that fight. I contend, however, that the spirit of John G. Fee lived on in several ways. His spirit of activism lived on in William H. Humphrey, a Berea graduate of 1903. He was the principal of John G. Fee High School, which was a Rosenwald school in Mason County, started in 1928. I contend that his spirit lived on in John Bate, who was a Berea graduate in 1881. He was the principal for 59 years. 59 years. Anybody ever done anything for 59 years?
Not yet.
You know, not yet. You know, I might breathe that long, but anything else, I'm 59 years at the Bate Rosenwald School in Boyle County, begun in 1928, okay? But who I really want to focus on, and these men did a lot of great things. For time's sake, I cut this because I want to focus on James S. Hathaway. He was also a Berea graduate. He was born a slave in Mount Sterling, Kentucky in 1859. He was a Berea graduate. He received his bachelor's in 1884, and he received his master's, in 1891. When he graduated, he worked as a tutor at Berea College. He later became the principal of Richmond High School, which was a Rosenwald school, and he was the president of Kentucky State College. Problems arose when he sought a promotion from tutor to become a full professor at Berea College. He was denied by the trustees and Frost, despite the fact that they gave him very good, excellent reviews on his work. I believe he tutored Latin and science, and I think a couple of other things as well. But they gave him very, very good reviews, but he wasn't promoted. His rejection launched a full-scale war of words in black-owned newspapers between Hathaway, black Berea College graduates, and Frost. So what you have taken place, Hathaway, he starts his own newspaper, and you have some other Berea graduates in Lexington, Kentucky, who also start their own newspaper. And they launch full-out campaigns against Frost and Berea College. And they attack the school and say, you have lost your first love. You have turned away from the mission of equality. Frost engages this battle and writes back. And then they write back. And then Frost, instead of, working on their territory, he chooses to just issue, a statement about all of this. But they keep going. And in fact, they publish a 32-page pamphlet about their grievances about Berea College. This is one pamphlet, and it's called Save Berea College for Christ and Humanity. Allegations and demands of black graduates. The allegations: Berea College changed its mission in pursuit of a few dollars. That sound familiar today? Berea College had become dissatisfied with the presence of the dark face and expelled black faculty. Berea College had attempted to run an imaginary color line through the benevolent purpose or trust to accommodate selfish ends. Before I go any further, I should also say, if you go and you do some research, there are going to be different sides to the Frost issue. Some people are going to say Frost actually fought for blacks. Because this case, well, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but a lot of people are going to say Frost was actually, fighting for black equality. He wanted blacks there. Other people are going to say he was very duplicitous, that he was the one behind ousting blacks from the school, because they are eventually going to be ousted from the school totally. They're going to say that he drafted the legislation that did it in his office. So there are two sides to this, okay? Just didn't think I could get it all in 20 minutes. But demands that the Friends of Berea College donate funds with the stipulation that the money be used for the benefit of all on the basis of equality, colored as well as white. So because they're saying that this was done for money, black graduates come back and say, if you're going to donate money to Berea College, put some stipulations on your money. What do you want your money to mean? If you want it to stand for equality, say so. However, people are free to do what they want to do. And we'll see. Well, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself still. Okay. So they also demand that Berea return to the idea, that motto that we saw earlier, God hath made of one blood all nations of men. All of this becomes a moot point by 1904. Anybody ever heard of the Day Law? In 1904, Senator Carl Day sponsored a bill to eject blacks from Berea College in order to protect whites from contamination. He visited the school one day, walked in by happenstance, and saw blacks and whites in the same classroom. He saw them living in dorms. He saw them eating together, and he was appalled. So he puts together legislation that's going to be called the Day Law. All blacks are expelled from Berea College. Now, as I said, some people are going to say that Frost was against this, that he fought. That's why there's a lawsuit filed. And this case goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Very important case. The opinion is upheld that on the basis of it can be separate and it can be equal. So it is not illegal. All blacks are ousted from Berea in 1904. Again, some people are going to say Frost fought for the creation of the Lincoln Institute, which was an establishment that came about because these blacks were ousted from Berea. So there's an attempt to find another school for them, or raise money for another school. You'll find letters where Frost is a huge advocate of this. And you have to do the research to see which side you fall on. You can find letters that, from other trustees that believe Frost was behind the whole thing. Like I said, you'll see things that say he sat in his office and he helped draft the actual legislation for the day law. What we do know is under Frost, the mission of the school did change. There did begin to be some sort of separation. The dining halls, you didn't necessarily have to sit beside each other anymore. Okay? So, cases appealed to the Supreme Court. It is upheld. Blacks are kept out of Berea College until 1950. But again, just to tie up everything, the point I'm trying to make is that the spirit that John G. Fee wanted to create lived on in these black Berean graduates, and they fought for equality. They continued to fight for equality through the Rosenwald Schools that they helped to build. I've been able to at least identify 4 Berea graduates who went on to take on Rosenwald Schools. I think I've also found one man who might have started a school in, I think it's Manassas County, Virginia. How else does the spirit of John G. Fee live on? Edwin R. Embree. Now we know who he is, right? We definitely know. I told you I'm useless. I'm just kind of standing up here today. So, he was the grandson of John G. Fee. He was raised in Berea. He was born in Osceola, Nebraska, July 31st, 1883. He was the grandson of John G. Fee, founder of Berea and Berea College. He called Fee the great inspiration of my life. The ideas for which he stood became the axioms for me. We also know something else about him, right? About Edwin R. Embree. He's the president of the Rosenwald Fund. So again, that spirit lives. He moved to Berea, Kentucky in 1891 after the death of his father. He lived with and was raised by Fee. Living there provided him with an understanding of interracial society and the fight for racial equality. You can read where he took long wagon rides or buggy rides with his grandfather, and they talked about racial equality. They would take buggy rides around the city, and he would stop and he would talk to somebody, and then his grandfather would tell him, that man used to be, pro-slavery. He used to hate me. He assaulted me once. But now look, we're friends. And he's changed his attitude toward blacks. And so from that, Edwin R. Embree says that he understood that opinions can change, that people can change. Prior to becoming the president of the Rosenwald Fund, he served as the secretary and the vice president and the director of Division of Studies for the Rockefeller Foundation. That was 1917 to 1927. He then served as the president of the Julius Rosenwald Fund from 1928 to 1948. He did not solely advocate for industrial training in Rosenwald schools. Now we know that was an issue, right? That was part of the controversy with Rosenwald schools, that blacks were being pushed into what some believed to be, menial tasks, that they weren't being directed toward this liberal arts education. He didn't believe in that. He awarded aid to blacks such as while he was president, he awarded aid to blacks such as Marion Anderson, James Weldon Johnson, Langston Hughes, Charles Drew, and W.E.B. Du Bois. He likely hired the first African to work with a philanthropic organization that was George R. Arthur, a former YMCA executive. He was also the first to appoint blacks to a philanthropic board by 2 decades. That was Charles S. Johnson, a famed sociologist and president of Fisk University, and Charles Hamilton Houston, attorney and architect of the NAACP's Brown versus the Board of Education legal defense. I guess I should say he was the architect of the legal defense for Brown versus the Board of Education for the NAACP. He also helped to establish Roosevelt College in Chicago as a racially integrated and democratic school, very much like Berea College. He was also the author of several works on race relations. This was Edwin R. Embree. Conclusions. Berea College's connections teach us to look beyond the obvious. When I first began my research on Rosenwald Schools in Kentucky, I looked in the obvious places. Kentucky State University, which used to be Kentucky State College. It was a historically black college and university, right? Makes sense. That's where the teachers ought to come from, right? That's where you should find these black narratives. I also looked at Kentucky Negro Teachers Association. It was one of the oldest, actually it's considered to be the oldest association for black teachers in the country. I think Georgia started one, but it didn't last very long, but this one lasted for quite some time. I also think I messed up the name there. It's KNEA, Kentucky Negro Education Association, so I apologize for that. I looked in those places, but I finally got around to Berea College. And so it teaches us to look beyond the obvious. You know, take the time to explore those hidden gems, those hidden treasures. Second, Edwin R. Embree's relationship to John G. Fee and the Berea College legacy teaches us to examine the motivations and connections of our historical actors. Our research shouldn't just be about what people did, but why did they do it? Okay? When we understand their motivations, we can better examine the outcomes. And I will stop there. Also, I just did an abbreviated bibliography, so you know what my sources are. Didn't steal from anybody. Thank you.